Good day, Market Chameleons, and everyone joining us for the first time. Thanks for coming by and watching the Market Chameleon webinar series. Before we get started, let's take a look at the shared disclaimer. Please be aware that neither Market Chameleon, Dimitri, or myself are registered investment advisors or a broker-dealer. If you're searching for investment advice, please reach out to a licensed professional. This show, as all our shows and webinars, are for informational purposes only concerning Market Chameleon tools and products. With that, one last look at the disclaimer, and let's welcome Dimitri Pargamonic to the stage. He's going to be talking about tracking gap up stock movers. Welcome, D.
Good morning, Will. How are you?
Great. How are you doing this morning?
Good. Let me share my screen here. Do you have?
Yep.
Good morning, everyone. And let's navigate to our pre-market report today, and I'll show you this report that keeps statistics what happens to stocks after the opening gap. Okay, so let's look under stocks. Over here we have pre-market trading. Click on that. This will take us to our pre-market report, and initially you come to this report which shows us today's pre-market movers. I'm going to slide down to get insights of what happens or what typically happened in the most recent history. This goes back last 20 days of stocks that gapped up or gapped down. The question is, okay, we have these stocks, they're moving in pre-market. Let's say they open higher than the previous day, or they open lower in the previous day. Well, what happens next? What happens in the next immediately right after the open? What happens for the rest of the day? Do the stocks tend to continue on the same path? Does it, if it opens up, does it continue to build on strength and go higher? Do the stocks that open down continue to follow through and move lower after the open, or is that initial gap close? Do stocks that tend to open higher then tend to give back or sell off, or vice versa? So that's what we want to see, and we're going to look at the stocks as a group and see what tends to happen. So let's see the statistics of what, it's not going to be the same every time, but what tends to happen. So looking at it, we have two reports: stocks that gap up, stocks that gap down. Okay. And in the last 20 days, we're looking at 2,987 observations. And this is what tended to happen if we looked at all the stocks from the open. So these are stocks that initially started higher on the day from the previous day. So if it closed the previous day at 100 and it opened at 105 or 102, it's higher. Okay, so that's the gap up. Well, if it opens at, let's say, 930 higher, from 930 on, what happens? Okay, so then our new starting point is 930. What happens after that? So from 930, from the opening price to 10 a.m., we see that 45% of those stocks continued higher. So the first half hour of trading, 45% of those stocks that opened higher added to gains. Okay, 54% sold off. On average, they lost 0.3%. And this indicates that, those stocks that did open higher, at least for the first half hour, saw some selling pressure, more than half the time for an average loss. Okay. What about the close? Was that initial opening, enthusiasm, did it follow through? Was it correct? Eventually did enough orders come in, enough demand to push those prices even higher? So by the close, we see it got a little bit better. 48% were higher, 51% lower. So close to 50-50. with an average gain of 0.3%. So even though by 10 a.m. it looked weaker, the rest of the day, it built on that strength. So this is looking at the last 20 days, all the observations. And the supporting data here is below. So these are the stocks. You could tab through here. Okay, this is going back 20 days. And you could see here the stock symbol, the name, some descriptive analytics. This tells you, the opening price, the what percent move did the opening price from the previous day, up or down. Then it tells you, okay, from this price, the open, where did it end up at 10 a.m.? So you can see here, this gained another 0.2%, or where did it end up by the end of the day? So you can see this one added 6.3%. Okay, so it opened higher by 1.6%, and then added another 6.3%, and down the line. So these are the aggregate stats. Let's say we wanted to narrow this down and see, well, what if we were looking for gap up movers, but maybe they'd have to gap up higher by a certain percent. Maybe like 1% is not as meaningful. What if we did more than 5%? So click on this 5%. So now we have all these that gapped up more than 5% at the open. So how did these tend to do? Okay, so these stats now give us a compare. This is the original stats for the entire group. This is now a more filtered. So here we see that those stocks that gapped up more than 5% compared to the entire group, by 10 a.m. only 43% of them were higher versus 45% of the entire group. So you could see here that less, the ones that were higher, not as many of those continued higher for an average loss of 0.5%. However, by the end of the day, by the close, it was similar with an average gain of 2%. So that first half hour seems to be initially not as strong as the rest of the day. So maybe the first half hour, we see it, at least from these stats, that first half hour of trading, we open higher at the morning, but by 10 a.m., the stocks in aggregate tended to weaken as a whole. Maybe sellers were more enticed by higher prices to come in and sell off some of the stock. But by the end of the day, it looks like on average, those tended to gain or add to gains from 9:30. We could also narrow this down maybe by market cap. What if we took stocks that were a certain market cap? Let's keep this 5%. But let's say we were looking at higher market cap stocks. Okay, so let's do the 10 billion or higher. So here we see a little bit of a different stat where 46% of them were higher, the higher market, instead of 45%, for an average loss of 0.1. And by the end of the day, we had 43% higher, but it looks like we had this outlier, see an average 19%, but I'm looking at right here, some outlier here, QMMM. It was up 1,200%. So I'm not sure what that one was. But that skewed the entire average. Obviously, not all of them are like that. But that's an important thing to look at, because when we look at the numbers, we want to look at the data and see, well, what happened here? Because that 19% is obviously very high, but here's the outlier that pushed that average higher. Okay, let's do a little bit higher market cap then. Let's go 50 billion. So with 50 billion, we had 17 observations, not that many, that gapped up higher more than 5% in the $50 billion market cap or higher range. But these tended to do better. So the higher market cap stocks as a group tended to do better than that control group, where 47% of those continued higher with an average gain of 0.6% in the first half hour. And by the end of the day, they were higher by 0.1%. Well, I'm going to stop there. I wanted to show quickly how to use this report to get insights on the stocks that gapped higher in the most recent history. We're looking at 20-day history, and use these filters and parameters to run statistics on what tended to happen after that market open.
Yeah, that was great, D. We did have one question from Rob. Can I ask it for you?
Yeah.
He asked, Will, please ask Dimitri if there are any indicators that appear prior to gaps on the gap up and gap down stocks.
I mean, I'm not sure about what indicators you're looking at, but maybe I'm not sure if you mean like there's an indicator that something's going to gap up or down. Then no, we don't know ahead of time. That would, if we did, that would have been, an incredible feature. But there's no, unless you're looking for some kind of other indicator that I'm not sure. But I guess, the short answer is no.
There you go. All right. Thanks for bringing this tool to the Chameleon community, D, and showing how it's used. Great job as always, my friend, and thanks for these webinars.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Stay safe out there. Have a great trading day, and we hope to see you tomorrow.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow, D. Thanks so much, buddy. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining. I did want to share a screen real quick. Let me share my screen. Cincy, thanks for that information you're passing along to the Chameleon community, by the way. That's very interesting. And Rob, if you don't know, Unusual Whales, they have a big actually presence on Twitter where you can search for them as well. Let me see if I can share my screen. All right. I wanted to show anyone who's new to the Chameleon community, you can go and click on the free trial up in the upper right-hand corner, and that will get you to the 7-day free trial. Going to try and helps the Chameleon community if you do that. Everyone, if you're on YouTube, please thumbs up. Always greatly appreciated. If you're on any of the other social platforms, please follow and like us. Great job, as always, by Dimitri. And thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Have a great day.